We'd like to welcome everyone to this Wheaton Graduate Chapel. I'm wearing my Wheaton tie and have my Wheaton College Graduate School mug because our special guest today is the Dean of the Wheaton Graduate School, Dr. Scott Moreau. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
We are enjoying these opportunities to interview people. They're free-ranging discussions, and I've got Patty and Jiva with all sorts of questions. But the question I'd like to start out with is, how are you doing during this crisis as the Dean of our graduate school?
I spent a lot of the first part of the crisis training people on how to get their courses online, so it was extremely busy.
Thank you, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. Then I spent several weeks trying to figure out whether I could work from home or not. And as you probably can tell, this is not my home that I'm working from right now. This is my office. I just realized I don't have a mindset that lets me work well at home. Plus, I missed having all the monitors I have here with me that I can look at different things and get things done. And beyond that, we're doing well as a family. My wife and I are empty nesters, so it's quiet at home, and we both love to read. We found some TV series that we like to watch, but we watch them over dinner and after dinner rather than really going through them all at once. So we're watching The Last Dance, which is the story of the Chicago Bulls in their last year, and having fun with that one right now.
Have you finished a book during this time?
I've read several books during this time, but I'm not sure that that's what you're asking me.
Well, the reason I say that, many of my friends have said, I've started so many books, but I haven't been able to complete anything in this crisis. So I wanted to talk, I thought if anyone would have finished a book, it would be Scott Moreau.
I genuinely think it's been fewer than 25, but it's been more than 20. Wow. But then my hobby is science fiction. So most of that has been science fiction, but I did have 2 required endorsement statements I had to make, so I wanted to read those 2 books. So the rest of it has been pleasure reading, but those 2 were more academic type of reading.
I had a friend who went to the Wheaton Graduate School and graduated about a year ago, and I asked her if she ever had a chance to talk to Scott Moreau, the author of so many wonderful missiology books. And she said no, because she held you in such high esteem, she was afraid to ask you any questions. But I thought we should ask a question that would be good for graduate students and for the wider audience. Tell us a little bit how you got to Wheaton College.
Oh, that's a fun kind of story. I went to Africa as a missionary and spent 2 years there, and just sensed this is the rest of my life. And while I was there, this organization I was with, Crew, started a seminary in Kenya, and when they started that seminary, I thought, this is okay, this is where I'll be the rest of my life. I came back and went to seminary and then returned to Africa. And in seminary, I had blinders on to make sure I didn't lose my focus of where I was going to go. I wanted to head back to Africa. And I went back, and after 7 years, I went there as a single. I was married. We had 3 children. And God began speaking to my wife, saying it's time to go back to the United States. And I didn't believe her, but she was persistent, and I finally started to listen. And I realized after a while that I sensed the same thing. And at that point in time, then we were saying, okay, where do we go? What do we do? And so I was talking with a good friend of mine. His name is Dr. Jim Pluteman, and he used to be a teacher here at Wheaton. And I knew he was teaching here at Wheaton, but he had been in Africa for 13 years and went back to the U.S. to teach at Wheaton. And I thought he will have insights on what that process is like. Both of us felt heading back and teaching in a school would be the best direction to go. And so I talked with him after a conference once. He was in Kenya, and we talked for about 3 hours. And at the end of the time, he said, you might do well at Wheaton. We just happen to have a position open right now in missions. And he said, but I'm not on the committee that makes that call, but the person who's chairing that committee happens to be in Kenya this week as well, too. Maybe the 2 of you should get together. And so that's what we did. And I could say the rest is history. It was a very bumpy history. but I'm been grateful to be here now for almost 30 years. But I did come on a 1-year visiting professor contract that I've managed to stretch out for almost 30 years now. So coming to Wheaton broadened my horizons because no longer could I focus exclusively on Africa. It made me think more deeply because we're training students going around the world and from all the world now. That's been a really exciting part of being here at Wheaton. But if you had asked me 35 years ago, would I be at Wheaton? I was, no way. I didn't even have a good experience here as a student, as an undergraduate student. So the idea of coming back to Wheaton was mixed for me. I thought, do I really want to go back to that place? And Dr. Pluteman reminded me, well, it's different being a teacher, number one, but it's also different being in the grad school. And those two differences have been borne out in wonderful ways. I've loved my time here, but it took me a long time to think of Wheaton as home for me. So I know I've gone beyond what you asked, Greg, but that gives people a basic idea. I came here and was wanted by about half and unwanted by about half. So I always felt a stranger, even here at Wheaton. Now, things have changed in the meantime, but I know what it's like to feel intimidated by people. I felt that way coming here myself. So if you happen to feel intimidated and don't want to talk to me, chocolate will get your way in my door anytime, as long as we're able to maintain appropriate social distance at that point in time, whatever social distance happens to be.
Scott, you're a missiologist. What is a missiologist?
A person who studies missions is the best way to say it. On one side, I'm a missiologist, but I'm a little bit too much of an activist to be a pure missiologist. A pure missiologist would be a scholarly type. They might like the philosophy of missions or the theology of missions or the history of missions. Those are.
Haven't you written books on just about all of those subjects? I think people qualify as academic.
True. That doesn't mean I don't. It's a funny thing when I think of the book Chariots of Fire, and the main character said, God made me to run, and when I run fast, I feel God's pleasure. Well, there's a sense in which I can say God made me to write and edit. And when I write and edit, I feel God's pleasure. So those are almost more accidental than they are purposeful in a trajectory that I had. I love being part of the school and part of the academic environment, though my feet want to be a little bit more on the ground than they do flying up in the academic world. I see Jiva's picking up a couple of books right now. Right. Two of my more recent books on contextualizing the faith and effective intercultural communication. Those are two of my favorite topics to teach as well, too. And I'm really enjoying the classes.
Well, two of my favorite international students are with us, and I'm sure they have questions. But before they ask theirs, what do you have to say to the international student trying to make his or her way into this foreign environment of the United States and Wheaton, Illinois?
You have to treat it as though you're almost a missionary. You're going to a new cultural setting. There's going to be adjustment. And unfortunately, people coming to the U.S. scene don't get trained well necessarily to come. You're coming to a new educational environment. Wheaton is a place where if you get below a 90, it's not a very good grade. And many of our international students come from places where it's impossible to receive a 90 for any assignment that they do. So it's a big change that way. And it feels good to international students to be getting 95s and 96s and 97s on assignments. They love it. Yet at the same time, it might make them feel that this is not really an education because it's not really tough enough. But the reality is it fits well into the U.S. setting. But I'd say Wheaton is very conservative, very evangelical. And that's an adjustment for some people because they wonder, where is the conservative? Because they come from even more conservative communities than Wheaton is. And they see the things Wheaton students do, especially undergraduate students, and they wonder, what in the world is going on there? Who raised this person? Where did they come from? They see students eating in classes, and how can a student disrespect a teacher like that? These students relax with their feet up on tables. And what in the world is going on? And part of it is helping prepare them for that, but it is culture shock. And I'd say one of the concerns I have for the international students when they go home is that they will experience reverse culture shock, because they will have experienced change here, and they'll see things here that they like, just as I did in Africa. And when I came back home, it took me 3 years to adjust to life to back in the United States for me. And part of that was giving up things that I had come to value and deeply appreciate in Africa, especially in relationships and the depth of relationships. American relationships are very shallow. They seem to go deep very quickly, and then they stop there. And so I usually spend one of the orientation sessions talking about Wheaton culture and American culture to help our international students. And they get together, they talk with each other. I would love to have some of them not be intimidated and come and talk with me. But if they want to talk with me as a group, I've typically had students come to me in groups and say, can we do lunch together? I love to do that and let them set the agenda. So those are some of the things I'd say.
If I can ask one more mission question before we turn to the graduate school, what's the big picture and what's God doing in missions right now? What are 2 or 3 trends or themes that come to mind?
I look at our 2 international graduate students on this call, and that's what God has in mind. We're seeing the Jivas and the Patties of the world rise up and take their place alongside the heroes of the faith. But you know, the reality is we're learning more and more as we look at the history more deeply that inevitably the history was carried on the backs of national leaders rather than just the internationals, but it was the internationals like me who wrote the books. And so they wrote about people like themselves rather than the people who were the real unsung heroes. And that's part of the dynamic for me. We're seeing now folks from non-white, non-Western world who are not just taking their place, but they're showing those of us who are Western and white like me that missions belongs to the whole church. And I'd say if you're looking for a theme for this time, it's from everywhere to everywhere. Every place is a receiving place. Every place is a sending place. We have different strengths in our sending and our receiving with each other, but every place is mutual. And so now, Greg, we talk about something called Polycentric Missiology. It has many centers rather than a single center. And I love that term because it means that it's fluid. Nobody's in charge except God, and we're all along for the ride. I have a hard time imagining a better time to be alive and see what God is doing in missions. And the other thing is it's God's mission, not our mission. We are privileged to participate with him in that. And I'd say evangelical missiologists have come to be aware of that over the last 25 years in ways they weren't 30 years ago.
You were quoted in the Wall Street Journal several years ago saying that many young people from the United States are interested in social justice and and relief work, humanitarian disaster relief, but not necessarily evangelism and church planting. How do we have a full gospel for the world?
You know, it's interesting, Greg, and over the course of my career, whenever I've heard someone talk about full gospel, it's one of 2 directions. It's either making sure the Holy Spirit is emphasized in missions, so it's full gospel in terms of the gifts of the Spirit, or it's a whole gospel, which usually means making sure that it's not as much relief and development, it might be social structures as well, too. The concern I tend to have is, at least over the course of history, and when I look at history, I see more and more that as people pay attention to the social needs, if anything drops out, it's typically evangelism and or church planting. You know, missionaries from the get-go, Western missionaries have been educators, they've been doctors, they've done medical work. The first missionary in Kenya actually set up a colony for freed slaves. So he was involved in social justice in a very deep way. But the reality is, as time goes by, people can lose their anchors. And so from my vantage point, if we lose evangelism, people might die having felt very satisfied with life, but they might find they're ill-prepared for what comes after life as we know it on this planet. And so when I look at a scale of eternity for me, I think my concern is I wonder whether we're going the route of the social gospel in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and that became, in effect, the liberal wing of the church, very concerned, and rightly so, with social gospel, with systemic issues, with justice, but far less concerned with evangelism. And my fear is we could go that direction. And I share that fear with a number of my colleagues. And I suspect as I watch evangelicals in the next 20 years, we're going to be fighting an article I labeled 1,000 splinters. We're going in 1,000 different directions right now. And nobody's in charge. Nobody's in control, which is good. But that's where I'm relying on my sisters and my brothers like Patty and Jiva to come alongside me and say, here's how to be holistic and not let go of the gospel. Because that's where I see my international friends are doing a better job than my American friends tend to.
Personal righteousness and social justice.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should turn to those international friends to turn over the Inquisition to them.
Well, I want to ask something related to the grad school. I'm graduating this semester. I was really hoping for a good celebration with my family. But, things changed and we understand that. So we just want to hear what Wheaton is planning for those of the grad students who are technically graduating this semester.
We have been recording videos of graduate school leaders, and those will be part of a picture. We have a reasonably short presentation that will be done live stream. And I'm waiting for the announcement to come out. I believe it's going to be Saturday at 3:00, which was when the graduation service was to officially start. But please don't hold me to that. There should be an email coming out very soon on that. And our hope is, well, not even our hope, our intention is we're going to invite students for those who are able to, and Jiva and you and Patty, Patty, are you graduating this year?
No, next year.
Next year, yeah. Jiva, the challenge would be if we invite you to come back next year, it's a huge expense for you. And we realize that, but I believe the intention right now is to bring this year's graduates, whoever can come join us next year, and have a much larger celebration, at least on the graduate school side. I cannot speak for the undergraduate because they're already overcommitted with everything they do just for their normal graduating class. The graduate school has space to be able to bring others in to join in a celebration. I'm going to miss, Jiva, putting the hood on you. I wish I could be there for that. I'm going to miss watching the pageantry as the PhD and the PsyD students get their hoods put on them by their readers of their dissertations. I'm going to miss the joy of seeing all of you together. And yes, we're all going to miss that. I'm going to miss not meeting your family. And I'm sad, perhaps not as sad as the graduates, because this will be my 60th graduation ceremony at Wheaton, since we do one in every December for the grad school as well too. So it's been I've been to a lot of them, and they're always a unique opportunity to celebrate together in ways that just make a gigantic difference. And I wish I could be there with you. But at least as far as I know, and there should be an announcement coming out, maybe even by the time this video has been seen, about what's going to happen on Saturday.
All right. That's great. Thank you.
And as we continue to talk about this, there's been so many losses, I think, and changes for everybody. And I think I can speak on behalf of most of the grad students. We have really appreciated all the effort that you and everybody on faculty and staff have done in order for us to continue our learning and our experience. But as we wrap up this semester and get ready to go into summer, and with a lot of expectation for the fall, what would be a message that you would send to all our grad students who will be watching this chapel for this summer? in getting ready for whatever comes for the fall.
If I were to give a message, it would be my life verse, Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with joy and peace in your faith, that by the power of the Holy Spirit, your whole life and outlook might be radiant with hope. It's radiant with hope whether we're facing coronavirus, whether we're still in lockdown, I just received news that one of our professors' father passed away from COVID-19 over the weekend. So, we're facing these devastating losses that are part of the new reality, but that has never threatened God's sovereignty. That's never threatened God's love for us. That's never threatened, at least from my vantage point, to separate me from the love of Christ. And so if I can offer a message of encouragement, it's God is still there. Seek to find him in new ways in this season, and perhaps he will begin to talk to you in ways you didn't anticipate as a result of this. I tell you, if nothing else, it's given me more free time than I would have anticipated. Some people have a lot less free time. In my particular case, since I wasn't teaching this semester, I had more, but it meant I was free to be relaxed a little bit more. I found, from my vantage point, the pace of life slowed down. I've enjoyed that. I hope you have found things to enjoy, whatever they might happen to be for you at this point in time. There's things I haven't enjoyed. I don't like seeing myself and realizing I've gone off my diet, and it's easier to see my double or my triple chin right now. And that's the one thing that Zoom calls exhaust me, because I see myself and I'm not happy with what I see. But God made me. I trust that he was happy with his product, even if I haven't always taken the best care of it that I should.
Scott, I'm surprised at the audience that we're getting for the graduate virtual chapel. And I'm told that we even have students who are preparing to attend Wheaton in the fall. What advice or comments do you have for incoming students?
We're a community. We work well together. We tend to be a little bit siloed by degree programs, but you develop extremely close relationships with the fellow people in your degree program. I love the graduate school because it tends to have a better international presence than the undergraduate does. And so the Jivas and the Patties are not the exceptions as much as they are on the undergraduate side. And that means you've got a diverse community committed to the same Jesus, seeking to walk a path with him, and at the same time to maintain not just academic integrity, but academic excellence. We really want to prepare people who will be scholar practitioners, who will go out into the world with hearts aflame for Christ, but who have minds that are also aflame both for Christ and for the world of the learning that they've received. So whether they become counselors and practitioners, whether they become theologians and scholars, whether they become teachers, whether like Jiva, they go back to a pastoral role or responsibility, our hope is they come away from here different people because they've encountered the Lord here. And that's what I would like to say for new graduate students considering coming in. You will encounter Christ here. You might always love it. You might not always love it. But the reality is pain is part of the growth process as well, too. And so the only thing I guarantee you is God will be here with you should you choose to continue to look to him. And graduate school is a wonderful experience from my vantage point.
Can you give us any inside information on what the immediate future is going to be for the graduate school?
Well, this summer, all of our classes are going online. And we have one program that has a class starting in August, and final decision has not been made for that because that is an intensive course, and then everything else for that group is online. And so they would miss the opportunity to get to know each other. And that's baked into the course to have people get to know each other. semester is going to go. We don't know the exact form yet. There are committees upon committees who are working on that, and there now is an academic group who will focus on what fall will look like. We anticipate it's going to be an adapted fall. What that means, we don't know. You know, the higher education groups here are talking about 15 different ways that schools might start this fall. And it's everything ranging from business as normal to fully online. None of us are thinking it's going to be business as normal, but it's too early for us to discern what that is going to be and exactly how that will work out. But we will be having classes, we will be having programs. On the positive side, most graduate students tend not to live on campus. And so there are housing opportunities that are available. And we don't know what campus housing is going to be like right now, simply because we don't know what the state of Illinois and the US government are going to say is possible. We are praying especially for our international students, because I know until the US embassies open up and begin visa processing again, and I don't know when or if that's going to happen, we're praying for that it's going to happen, because without a visa, it's not going to work. We're processing all the paperwork we can right now, but at the same point in time, we're anticipating starting, but I have no guarantee. And I can't offer a guarantee. I wish I could. I really do.
What is your vision and dream for the graduate school over the next few years, once we weather this crisis?
That the graduate school will be thriving, that we'll have people here who are completely committed to Christ, including faculty, staff, and students, that as we send people out, we will make an impact for the kingdom, whether or not anybody's ever heard of Wheaton College. For me, it's about the kingdom. It's not about the college. And the motto, of course, is for Christ and his kingdom. Some have suggested we need to change it. Instead of for Christ, it's with Christ or under Christ in his kingdom. We need to change the preposition. And I think that's not that bad of an idea. In what sense are we under Christ and his kingdom, or with Christ in his kingdom? If this truly is God's mission, who's leading the charge? I would like to think it's the Lord, but he does that through the hearts of people. And so we're about producing people who love Jesus. They already do coming in, but who love him more deeply, and who have added an edge of scholarship that they couldn't get probably elsewhere, at least in the same way. And they're prepared for leadership, and they've been rubbing shoulders, if we're allowed to, in the fall, with people who will be leaders themselves in other countries and other organizations. So I'm hoping, Jiva and Patty, you found lifelong friendships here with people you will always be able to connect with, who are not from Latin America and who are not from South Asia, but who are people you'll be able to say, yeah, I was with that person and we were together as students, and now look at what God is doing through them. Or they will say, look at what God is doing through you. And that's my prayer.
Thank you so much, Scott. Do either of my colleagues have a final question?
Maybe I'll have a question for you.
Okay.
What do you anticipate is going to be coming up for you in the fall? Jiva, you're going to be back home, Lord willing.
Yeah.
What is that going to involve for you?
I mean, I came to Wheaton with the dream that we would be able to have the presence of the gospel in all of India. I think we all need light, just as each one of us long for that sunlight every morning. I envision that each of us need the light of the gospel in the lives of people, and thereby in the communities. So I came to Wheaton with the dream that I would be equipped and enabled and empowered to take this light of gospel into people's life. So I'm embarking on a mission, an evangelistic discipleship mission, in helping people hear the good news of the gospel. So,
Jiva, sorry to interrupt, but we've got Dr. Scott Contextual Moreau with us. How are you going to contextualize that ministry with music? I think he'd be interested to hear about that.
I think I was going on, but as part of my mission is really the strategy of contextualization. I mean, I wrote a paper for Dr. Scott Moreau, and I did mention on how I think we lost ground in our missions because we haven't really contextualized, the strategies or the processes of that mission. But if you're really trying to connect with people of that particular land, I think you got to talk their language, and contextualization is the means through which you talk in the mother language of the person to whom you're sowing the gospel. So contextualization is key. But to answer your question in short, we are coming up with 3 different projects that are aimed to take gospel into people's life, and with the strategies of contextualization, communal ideology, meaning reaching people with the perspective of relation, and then eventually with the 21st century appeal of utilizing art, music, and literature in reaching people.
How many hits do you have on YouTube now?
Well, my YouTube channel, my both albums have close to about 10 million views on YouTube. So,
I think I did 9 million of those, Jiva.
I can't. I can, but it's God's grace. So, and all my music is contextualized. It's a blend of it's more of Indian, and it's also a blend of little Western. So I have a good blend of different genres.
Fusion. It's a fusion.
I would call it more as a fusion. Yes.
Patty, how about you?
Well, what the future holds for me is uncertain, I think, but I am very open and willing to see. I would hope that I'm able to begin my internship and a site that had offered me a position to intern with them, and I'm hoping to start that in July 1st. So whether that's going to be through telehealth form of therapy or being back in the site, I don't know, but I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to start that sometime in the early July, and then get ready for how the semester is going to be. So I think one of the things that this time has been teaching me, and I think for all of us who are in the psychology programs at the graduate school, is that we are really getting an extra training on how to respond and what does it mean to be a therapist during a global pandemic or something as big as this. And I think as much as things change for us, this is part of our training, and I see it as a plus. Now we know, it's something like this.
Yeah. It's an unintended blessing. Yeah.
Scott, thanks for playing the end game. And eternity is very important to you. It's important to us and evangelism. And thank you for your stewardship of Wheaton College Graduate School as you serve as its dean. We have had all sorts of feedback, and people have really enjoyed the interviews and the teachings and other parts of our service. But people politely have been asking, what about the music? And so we have heard your requests, and we brought one of our favorite musicians to join us today. Raho, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Sure. Well, be gladly here. We've been, as a whole family, here in Wheaton since last August. And my wife and myself, we are together in a program, Marriage and Family Therapy. And it's actually pure God's grace that we could have this opportunity to come and study here. And our 2 teenagers are actually with us, who are around us, observing us and trying to do the best in the second language school for themselves too. Yes.
Draho, you're a BGC scholar. We just wanted to hear how it feels like for a person from Central Europe to come over to Wheaton as a BGC scholar and experience this culture.
Well, it feels miraculously interesting because, I and my wife would not be here if we would not be granted this amazing gift to actually be studying. This is pure God's provision for Slovakia, for our country where we come from, that God seems wanted us to bring this back to our country, because we don't have any marriage and family therapy at all. And to be the first ones to actually gain the high quality study and return with that, I mean, that's huge. And BGC has been a great part of this miraculous work.
Well, Daho, I have the blessing and the great opportunity to have shared this first year of your school with you and your wife, Susanna, and consider you one of my closest and dearest friends here. So I was just wondering if you could share with us what is something that God has taught you through this first year here in Wheaton.
He taught me a very interesting thing, and that has been, I'm trying to learn to become this professional therapist, that really God is teaching me to be a client, to listen well, to be the good ear. Because even this pandemic situation just made us all to be clients, isn't it? And for me, this is a huge thing from God. It's like a special subject into our program that was not planned, but God has provided that for me and my wife to actually learn that we are so dependent on God, even in this field. So that is a huge thing for me to get to know and learn.
I feel like the odd person out. I'm the only one who's not a BGC scholar in chapel today. And we have a lot of people listening in from all over the world who may not know what a BG scholar is. That's the Billy Graham Center scholar. So thank the three of you as church leaders from around the world coming here to learn and then to go back to and serve in your respective places. Raho, he's going to lead us in worship. Thank you for your music ministry.
The music and the worship has been a great part of my life. And I'm thankful to God to give us various gifts, and that God has granted me with the gift to sing and lead his people into his throne. And one of the songs that God has placed on my heart is the desert song. You might know, most of you, this song. And for me, this song has been very special, because even in these times that we experience now, we can rely on God of love. And in these days when I'm thinking about me and my position in his hand, in his heart, I know that I'm precious. And I would like to take you to his precious heart with this song. Please join me with this song, the desert song. This is my prayer in the desert, when all that's within I feel dry. This is my prayer in my hunger and need. My God is the God who provides. This is my prayer in the fire, in weakness or trial or pain. There is a faint truth of more than gold, so refine me, Lord, through the flame. And I will bring praise, and I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and He is He. This is my prayer in the battle, when triumph is still on its way. I am a conqueror and co-heir of Christ, so firm in his promise I'll stand, and I will bring praise, and I will bring praise. form against me shall remain, and I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory, and He is all of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing. I have a reason to worship, to worship. All my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing. I have a reason to worship. And I will bring praise, I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. And I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory, and He is here. I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapons formed against me shall remain. And I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory, and He is He. This is my prayer in the harvest. Favor and providence flow. I know I feel to be emptied again. The seed I received, I will sow.
Draho, thank you for sharing with us. I've got some verses from Romans chapter 8, verses 26 through 28, this time in the Message. Meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right along helping us along. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. He does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our worldless sighs, our aching groans. He knows us far better than we know ourselves, so that we can be sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good. A lot of us may feel like we are in the desert during this corona crisis, but thank you for reminding us of who we are in Christ. Thanks for leading us in worship. Would like to thank Dr. Moreau, would like to thank Draho, and we close our chapel time with a benediction. And since we had a missiologist with us, I thought it would be very appropriate that we have a benediction in several different languages. And now may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God our Father, and the fellowship of His Spirit be with you all. Amen.
మన తండ్రి అయిన యెహోవా దేవుని యొక్క కృప, యేసుక్రీస్తు ప్రభువారి యొక్క దీవెనలు, పరిశుద్ధాత్ముని యొక్క సహాయము మనతో ఎల్లప్పుడూ నిలిచియుండును గాక.
Que la gracia de Dios, nuestro Padre, la comunión con su Santo Espíritu y el amor de Cristo esté con ustedes desde ahora y para siempre.
Nech spoločenstvo Ducha Božieho je s vami a nech je Božia ruka, Boží pokoj nad vami od teraz i na veky. Amen.
We'll see you next week.